Making an episode of a live-action show is a lot like baking a pie. To make a good one requires equal parts hard work, time, and love. If you succeed, you'll create something great to be enjoyed by everyone. But if you are missing even one of the key ingredients, well,
hey guys, Pie Guy Rules here, and welcome back to the Bizarro baby. Episode number... Oh, sorry, I hit something in my throat there. It's episode number... Actually, I'll tell you later. Right now, all you need to know is that I'm talking about an episode called...
I'm here to talk to you guys about an episode of
Carly, Sam, and Freddie go to the internet convention
really
to a panel, and Spencer goes along as well because he's a fan of an MMO and is doing some cosplaying. There's also a third storyline about Gibby, his grandfather, and his little brother attempting to make it to the convention, but getting held up because his grandfather is senile. Since it's the shortest and simplest, I think I'll be talking about that plotline first. Really, it all boils down to making fun of the elderly. Gibby's grandfather can't hear correctly, he doesn't know where he is half the time, and is generally cranky and adamant. It's the kind of humor that one watch through I'll laugh at and then another watch through I'll be dead silent. It's just kind of mildly funny, so sometimes the jokes hit and sometimes they don't. Overall though, the storyline definitely feels like padding, and this is an issue with all three storylines in this episode. Each one of them feels like it goes on for just a bit too long, especially considering not much actually progresses in the story of each of these three plotlines. In this case, Gibby and his family don't actually make too much progress every time we cut back to them, in terms of making it to the convention. This episode as a whole probably could have been done in about 30 minutes, and then maybe have been broadcast as a super special extra long episode like #Super Psycho was, and then they could have just cut out Gibby stuff altogether to make it down to 22 minutes for reruns. Now let's talk about Spencer's plotline. What I'm about to say might sound hyperbolic or like I'm exaggerating, but I say this with 100% sincerity that this is one of, if not the best storylines in all of iCarly. And it's the type of thing that's kind of hard to describe, but I will give it my best shot. So, this plotline guest stars Jack Black, dressed up like some sort of World of Warcraft-esque character, dueling Spencer, who is also dressed up as the arch-rival of said character in-game. This includes hurling insults at each other, critiquing each other's costumes, having a musical poetry battle, fighting with a giant spear and 2 balloons, and flocking each other, all the while making incredibly nerdy jokes, but playing it 100% straight. So basically, the whole thing is Jack Black and Jerry Trainer in ridiculous costumes prancing around each other and singing. It's goofy, but in the best possible way. And the fact that they actually got Jack Black to do this really just sells it. Also, he gets to say the line, "Eternal damnation." So do I, apparently. Something I also like about the plotline is that they are pretty accurate in their portrayal of gaming, and that they do actually say what an MMO is. And the way the characters talk about the game is pretty spot on. Even though Spencer is apparently gaming with the default map maps, which, if you don't know, no self-respecting gamer would actually do. So at this point in the video, you're probably thinking, where's the baked good, Pie Guy? And why are you even reviewing this episode at all? Didn't you say I was going to be the Bizarro of Poison Pie? Or alternatively, you probably figured out what's going on by now. Or maybe you're watching this in the future and it's all incredibly obvious because I've retitled the video. But just bear with me. All will be revealed at the end. So the main story is that Carly has a new crush on a random hot guy with no personality of the week. She plans to meet up with him at the convention that they're doing a panel at, but as it turns out, the audience is a bunch of obsessive shippers who demand to know who Freddie is in a relationship with, which costs Carly her chance at the hot guy. If you're wondering how this is enough material to make this episode a two-parter, like I said, it does feel like it drags out a bit. There's a lot of stuff about the fans fighting over shipping Seti or Freddie, and there's a lot of stuff that honestly probably could have been taken out about them preparing for the convention. The actual meat of the story is really, really thin, and it's padded out with, of all things, random cameos from other Dan Schneider shows. So, from Drake and Josh, Gavin, Craig, and Eric, there's a little bit of dialogue between them, and one of them gets kicked out because they mentioned something about shipping, and the other one happens to catch a flare because for some reason, to calm down this audience in an indoor auditorium, the security at this convention decided to set off 3 flares. But otherwise, realize their appearance is entirely inconsequential. Sure, it's cool to anyone who watched Drake and Josh, but I feel like they got a bit too much screen time. It would have been much better if they had just been in the audience with maybe one line, making it more of an Easter egg than something that gets a decent amount of focus for no real reason. Also, no jokes about how Carly looks conspicuously like their friend's little sister. Additionally, there's some girl who has speech issues, who's from Zoe 101, but then would continue to have other appearances on iCarly. She's here too. It's like Captain America, Civil War, but for the Schneiderverse. You know, I was making a joke here, but I forgot that there is a reference to Captain America in that stupid promotional picture for the Henry Danger Thundermans crossover. Anyway, she gets a little more to do, but like the other cameos, really just not too much happens. Also, I love the fact that there's like a grown man in the audience talking about iCarly. I mean, why would an adult guy waste his time? Okay, so here's the thing about this story. Basically, the whole thing exists as a vehicle just so that the creator of the show can deliver a message to the fans. It is meta in that way. And amazingly, it actually kind of fits with the show. Because the show is about a show, they can have the audience of iCarly, the show within the show, be fans of shipping these characters, when it also relates back to the real-life show of iCarly and real-life fans shipping those characters as well, if you follow me. Now, you may know of this phenomenon of creators basically writing an episode to respond to fans from the much-beloved Cartoon Network mega hit Teen Titans Go. But I have to say that in this instance, it is actually pretty respectful to the fans while also still being kind of funny. It's pretty clear that the show portrays an exaggerated comedic version of the people who ship these characters. And in Carly's speech, she mentions that all iCarly fans are great, even the crazy mega fans. And actually, if you want to hear what the man himself had to say about this episode, he has a blog post about it. Sure, the episode was a parody of some iCarly fans, but only a very specific type. The type of fans who fight bitterly and are mean to each other. The ones who take the whole Creddy versus SETI thing too far and actually get verbally abusive with others who don't agree with them. Those are the fans who were parodying, the fighty ones. But they only make up a very small percentage of iCarly fans. And honestly, we don't dislike those fans. We just think they'd be a lot happier if they calmed down, which is a very reasonable thing to say. Anyway, the message that the episode gets across at the end is just that iCarly is a show that is not about shipping. It's about comedy. It's about having fun. It's about telling silly jokes. Sometimes it is about romance a little bit, but that's never going to be the focus of the show, and it would be awful if any two of the three of them did start dating for a few episodes. And while yes, the speech is a bit on the nose, and is very obviously straight from the mouth of the creator directed at the audience, it's something that I think the fandom of the show needed to hear. As Dan mentioned, there was a large number of iCarly fans who got really obsessed with tearing off the characters, taking screenshots as proof that these characters belong together just because they're standing really close to each other, which is something that's made fun of in this episode as well. So this episode was just Dan's way of saying, look, we're not going to turn the show into one big shipping fest. And it's okay if you want to ship the characters, just maybe don't go too crazy with it, and do understand what type of show this is and what to expect from it. Unfortunately for Dan and anyone who liked the show for reasons other than shipping, the shipping was actually one of the reasons the show got really popular. They're a trio of attractive teenagers. The show does go out of its way to ship tease every so often, as well as the fact that the show existed in a time when kids and teenagers were able to go on the internet and share their love of shipping characters with each other. All these things added up into the perfect storm of a very large and very vocal portion of the iCarly fans being obsessed with shipping and not caring about most other things like, I don't know, comedy or storytelling. And if you don't believe me on this, take a look at some of the episodes that had the highest viewership on the show. I Kiss, I Look Alike, I Date a Bad Boy, I Think They Kiss, I Saved Your Life. And even though I Start a Fan War isn't one of those episodes with insanely high ratings, there's a reason for it. The Hannah Montana movie first premiered on Disney Channel that day. And because the shipping thing was so big, of course Nickelodeon capitalized on it. Promotions for I Start a Fan War were about how this episode would finally settle the Creddy versus SETI thing once and for all, which is not only greatly misleading, but something that's only going to make the shippers go more die-hard into their ships. But back to the episode for one moment. The episode as a whole is alright. There's some good random jokes in there, like how Sam's mom packed her a battery for lunch, and and Freddie getting sucked into the crowd of fans. Not to mention the comedy gold that is Spencer and Jack Black having a nerd off. The main storyline was an interesting reflection of real-life events and something that did kind of have to be said, although I do feel like it could have been a lot less on the nose and a little bit more hidden in the subtext rather than just blatantly stated to the audience. And on top of that, all three sequences could have been edited down. Even the stuff with Spencer and Jack Black, I think would have been a little bit better if they had shortened it just a little bit. But overall, it's an interesting episode and rounds out to be about okay, although I still think it's worth watching for Spencer and Jack Black alone. I Start a Fan War is like a wedding cake. A promise, if you will, that the show was going to remain focused on comedy and is not going to give in to the shippers and write a sloppy, ugly story about two characters dating each other. You might be wondering why I'm telling you all this. Why do the pastry at the end of the episode? And why obscure the title? I'm sure a lot of you have figured it out by now, but it's because this video is a prologue. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the SETI. Hi Guy Rules.
Everything else.
see how long it ends wants to know what Freddie Ben's rather personal parts. Don't worry, because I made a blog post about it on iCarly.com, which reads, not certain first, but me and Sam got into a huge fight because that ruined my chance to go to new underlying resource development. He changed all my answers on the campus application to make exactly as I thought. Very early on, they made up. And I never think it's kind of funny now. I decided to work online was what changed all the ironically, it's a nice joke. I have a pretty funny girlfriend. Here you go. Somehow I really doubt that the Benson wrote this. It sounds like something Sam would write.
In the season, and I hadn't written down. I gotta be real for when I was making the video, but yeah, there is a reason the iCarly video is relatable. So I can actually have a few funny moments. Oh, right, because I was in a wow, it literally didn't change at all.